speaking of, no, that's not speaking of anything. I was going to try to segue and say housing.
Not everything's connected.
No,
It's okay.
no, it is because parents had to leave their house at some point with
Yeah.
the students, or
There
maybe
you
they
go.
didn't leave their house. Oh, and speaking of housing, let's turn it over now to Rob Carlmark. Now, there's an interesting story happening with our housing. Is it here in the state of California?
Well, I think Audiane's got a little bit more. She's going to kick us off, and then, of course, I will bloviate beyond that.
Yeah,
Please
of course,
do.
of course.
So Silicon Valley, we all know it's super expensive to live there, but now it's ridiculously expensive. And
But
the
like,
idea
it's been
of,
like that.
I know, but it's now people don't necessarily know which socioeconomic class they're in. And that's an article that I read that said, you think the middle class is this one thing. And whether you make $10,000 or you make $300,000, you might consider yourself middle class because of how much it costs to live in the area where you live. Well, this article says that while you may not know which class you're in, the government certainly does. And so there is a range for every single place you live. So I wanted to run down a couple of these. We have Portland, Oregon. Middle class is $45,000 to $137,000.
Wait,
Okay.
Massive
45.
range. 45 to 137. Then you have Orlando, Florida. In Orlando, Florida, it's 34,000 to 104,000.
But that's like average.
This is a lot of people and a ridiculously different lifestyle for somebody making
Yeah.
34,000 to 104,000.
Right, I see what you're saying.
And this is medium income, and I'm not sure if it is by household or by individual,
Yeah.
but even
And
so.
why it changes so much depending on the different parts of the country. Like, why
Right.
is it middle class just considered middle class across the country?
Right.
Like, if you make X amount to X amount, you're middle class, lower class, or you're in the upper class.
But that's what this is talking about, and how the cost of housing over the years has increased exponentially, but the amount that our paychecks are increasing by is just not on the same level.
Right. Depending on the industry you're in, right?
Right. So national
not.
inflation was about 5% since 2015. Here in Sacramento, the cost of living has increased about 13%, while California is at 11%, but the wages are only going up by 4%. So the numbers just don't add up. If you're only getting
a lot of
4%
numbers.
more in, okay, you're getting 4% more in your paycheck.
Correct.
But the cost of rent is
Right.
13% higher than it was last year. That's three times
Three
as much.
times.
Exactly.
More than
Basic
3 times.
economics. There's money coming in and money going out. So there's
Yep.
there's more money coming in,
Coming.
but there's way more money going out,
Precisely.
and that puts a strain on everybody.
Exactly.
Because there's things that you spend money on. There's things that you
Yeah.
have to, and then there's things that you kind of want to. So what it comes down to it is you're gonna pay rent, you're
Right.
gonna pay mortgage, you're gonna pay your gas bill, your electric bill.
Or if you're a millennial, you're not.
Yeah.
Where are we
Which
going?
is why
Home.
millennials don't. I mean, they're going to put their money toward traveling and staying in
Yeah.
hostels and hopping around and not having kids versus having
Right.
that home and the
It's true.
picket fence and the kid and family.
Exactly. So I brought this issue up before. It
Okay.
seems like there's this giant trend right now of so many people trying to just knock the millennials down.
Okay.
And I have a
Oh, yeah, don't
real
bring down my
problem
millennials.
with that.
Yes.
Okay. And I want to show you something. So what you're talking about, Audiane, with the trend of in that the cost of living
Inflation,
and all
yes.
these other things are outpacing your wages by a huge margin. This is nothing new. This has been going back for a while.
Right.
And basically, almost everything big is so much more expensive than it was just 20
Wild.
years ago. So, if you imagine a millennial, let's say they're 20 years old, if we have that graphic, I'd love to see it. There we go.
look at
So look
that.
at this. So what you're looking at here is, this is just over 20 years. Food and beverage, so going out to restaurants, alcohol or not alcohol, orange juice, milk, things like that, that's up. Housing's way up. Wages are up. This is true. Going back 20 years, that's true. But look at all the other things.
Incredible.
Medical care services, child care. You guys don't know about this, but let me tell you something. Child care
I hear
very
it's
often
terrible.
is more than a mortgage
What?
per month. Yes. College textbooks.
That's what I'm impacted by. College.
And look at the hospital services.
So expensive.
So, some things are cheaper. New cars have gone down a little bit. Clothing, you can get clothing. Back in the day, clothing was kind of expensive. Now there's all this fast fashion
Yes.
stuff. So
Right.
you know about that.
Everyone has a
TVs are
discount
less
store.
expensive, so we're getting a break on TVs. But you know what? A TV's $500. You go to the emergency room, it's $500 just to walk in the
Just
door
walking.
with insurance.
For the doctor to say,
Yeah.
oh,
so
take some Tylenol.
this is something that
True.
If you are established in your career and things are going well for you, and you know you're a professional, you've been in 10, 20 years, you've moved up, you may make a fair income, you may have kids, and there you can support. Everything's fine. But if you're 18 years old, look at the headwinds you're running into. I mean, before you're out the door in college,
Which is why so many kids are staying home with mom and dad until
Amen.
they're 35.
So-
if not forever.
go look for insurance. Let's just say I don't want to be on mom and dad's insurance. You know what? Here's the other thing too. Some kids can't be on mom and dad's insurance.
Mom and dad don't have insurance?
Yeah, they either don't have insurance or they don't have mom and dad. I
Right.
mean, look, these things are
Right.
very expensive, and it's turning into this situation where people are not having a lot of choices that they can
Right.
make.
It's a crisis.
Exactly. So the criticism is these millennials living with mom and dad forever. Go out there, look.
What do you expect?
What do you expect? What do you expect them to do?
In some cases.
Absolutely, not everyone. But you know, when you're graduating college with $100,000 debt and you didn't do anything fancy, people forget about this. Back in the '60s, tuition in California was free.
That's
It was
amazing.
part of living in the state, and over time, tuition has gone up. But the big part about going to college is you don't live at home often.
Right.
A lot of people go away to college, and now you're talking about room and board either with the university itself, or you're going to go into the housing market in a college town. Good luck with that.
Which
it's
is
expensive.
now why, and there was an article that I
Okay.
actually shared in our little channel that we share content, and it was a story that came out about how students now, or soon to be students, there was this whole generation, right? During our parents, toward the end of it, depends how old your parents are, but like after your parents per se,
Right.
and it was all about going to college. What college you're
Right.
going to,
Right.
that is living the dream. You will be successful if you get that college degree. Just get a bachelor's and it's enough. Now it's become so mainstream
So true.
where it's an oversaturated thing. Everyone has their bachelor's. If you don't, it's sort of like, oh, well, what did you do? You went off to the military or some trade school. But now they're saying, oh, wait a minute. We need more trades. We need more
Right.
trade, people, tradesmen and women, because
Yes.
now we're entering where people are getting their masters, getting all the way, and then coming out with really no expertise, cheated their way, or maybe not, but went through classes. But what are you actually learning sometimes
Right.
when you're going through these classes and you have such a high amount of debt that it may be better off? And when I was at the school, my high school speaking, I even had to shift the way that I was speaking, because I automatically said, who's excited to go to college? Because it was a bunch of seniors.
Okay.
I said, wait a minute. I don't want to make those who don't want to go to college, or maybe who aren't into education like that, don't
Right.
want to take it to the higher education level, feel like they're less than, because you certainly aren't.
Right.
You can be successful, if not more successful now, and not be as much in debt
Right.
if you go a different route. If you're an entrepreneur, if you have a great idea, you've been watching Shark Tank, you can now speak econ language, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are so many different opportunities, and social media. People are social media stars these days, but then
Right.
what is that? You know, I saw something where it said to care so much and to be rich in social media numbers in terms of your following is like being rich in Monopoly money.
Okay. So
It's
Joshua,
sort of fake. Like it kind of just what happens when the app doesn't work.
Right.
What happens
True.
when the app goes away.
Right.
Right.
Like it's not tangible. It's not real. It's what are you an expert in?
That's true.
Just scary.
you know, I wasn't going to talk about this, but that just made me think about this. I heard for so many years when we were coming out of college, millennials don't know how to have conversations anymore. All we do is text, we can't spell. But there are whole careers now that millennials are prime for because of the way that we communicate. That's one.
We've always communicated. Yeah.
And that's because our society is moving in this direction where telecommunication and communication in a quick way is paramount. So where is the space in our market, in our economy for those trades? What will those trades be? Back in the day, before the Industrial Revolution, plenty of things to do. Even after the Industrial Revolution, you have, what was it, the car, and you could
Automobile
be on
industry.
your lane to do something. But now, what does that look like for people who would want to pick up a trade? It's just a different scene. And I wonder what that would be like for them. All I know is that I didn't come out of college with a lot of debt, and I still went back home because it was the smart thing to do. Because if you want to buy a house, I was
Right.
living in Philadelphia, or I was living in New York and then moved back to Philadelphia, just to afford a home at 23, 24 is so difficult.
Right.
And you would need a down payment of $35,000, $40,000 to get anything sizable.
Right.
And you're like, where are you going to get that money? when
even
you
for
just
first-time
graduated from
home
college.
buyers.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
We're getting some comments, some good ones. Teresa Stoneman says, I love California and have lived here for 38 years, but the cost of living here is outrageous. I'm looking to retire in a few years and will be heading east.
Right.
So
lot of people
a lot
are
of people
looking
are,
at-
it's not even with a fixed income, it's not even possible for me,
Right.
me to live a comfortable life here in California.
And I don't know
And
how
that's
far
sad.
east you want to go, because coming from the
Too
east, it
east.
is so expensive. Maybe the Midwest is the new place to be. I don't
Well, you
know.
talked about the middle of nowhere yesterday.
Yeah, my
and
wife
how,
is literally from, according to an algorithm, the middle of nowhere. It's called Glasgow, Montana, but I'm
Right.
telling you, it's a good lifestyle there. Things are not that expensive.
Okay.
There's plenty to do.
But then what happens? They say that about Sacramento for years, right? Until people
Right.
start fleeing there because where they're living is
Right.
just too expensive, and then it gets overpopulated,
Yeah.
oversaturated, and then it starts booming, and you
Right.
get a place like the Golden One Center, and then you get all
Mm-hmm.
these cool things to come, and then the cost of living peaks.
You know, I think, every generation has their struggles.
Yeah,
For
absolutely.
example, our generation did not have the Vietnam War, in which people were drafted and their life changed in an instant.
Right.
Many people lost their lives. Some people came back and had a lot of
PTSD.
Yeah, exactly, and just life became very difficult. Some people excelled past the Vietnam War with what they went through.
Right.
We didn't have that.
A different war,
Yeah.
16-year long.
Yeah, exactly. But
Afghanistan war, right.
Who's in the military is voluntary now.
Yeah,
essentially.
it's not a
So
draft.
every generation, we need to respect that. Every generation has their major issues that affect them. But I think what's going on now with the cost of everything far outpacing anything related to wage increases over time, is this is affecting all generations at once.
Yep.
So this is actually one of
Yeah.
these things where, wait a second, seniors are this
Baby
way.
boomers.
Millennials will say that, and everyone's going to look at different generations and say, this is what's wrong with you. This is what's wrong with you.
Right.
Guess what? This is,
Point
I think, one issue where we are all in this together because you can go get a better job. You can make more money. Everyone's doing side hustles. Have you taken an Uber
Right.
lately? Who's going to
Every
pick you
day.
up? Someone who's 18 or 58.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all over the place. So the fact that there's a side hustle, hey, so what do you do? Well, I got this other job, but I'm just doing this on the side.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got to pay off some student loans. I always ask what their story is just because it makes for a better ride.
It's amazing.
But the fact that everything is just so expensive all of a sudden and out of your control, to be honest with you, that it makes it very difficult. We start scaling back vacations. We start scaling back all the things that are,
Discretionary,
Yeah,
exactly.
But now just your core basic things, shelter, food,
Right.
water, gas, power, all those things. It's really expensive and it's tough on everybody.
Rosalinda
It is.
Calkin says it's making it so difficult to be able to save for things like college for kids, retirement, et cetera, given the amount being paid for cost of living, debt, et cetera. And it's so true. I mean, I
tough.
remember growing up where, our friends' parents, my parents, oh, this is on reserve for your wedding or
Oh,
for college. It was like,
right.
even
Right.
then it was like tough to do both. Now it's like, when we have kids, I'll still be paying off my college debt along with my mom because she has. Are you good? No, you're fine. She has a certain amount of debt when I was in school, and it was a parent loan that cannot be transferred to my name
Oh, yes.
because the way in which it's set up. So it's all of us contributing, but
Absolutely.
I need to acquire that debt, but then I can't write that debt off because it's not in my name. So it's just become so like I'm going to be paying off student loans. I mean, I hope that at some point, when you reach whatever career you're in, that like that is a dream one day to be able
Right.
to write that off. And even wedding, you throw a great wedding. All of these are choices, though. I didn't have to go to college. I didn't have to go to USC, which is a private university, for those 2 years. I could have stayed at San Diego State. I didn't have to have the 250-person wedding and the dress and all that. Choices we
did.
make, but we did. So it's not me complaining. It's knowing
Right.
that all of this is happening. And now that I know the value of money a bit more as a
Right,
married
that's-
woman
Right.
and
That's
the
the
dual
conversation,
income.
though.
Yeah.
It's about teaching kids
At a
the
very
value of money.
young
Right.
age now.
I cannot tell you how many times I had the conversation.
I think I need to
something
get you
stuck in
water.
my throat.
Yeah.
It's okay. We have cinnamon rolls.
Do you
Maybe
want,
that'll help.
True.
Do you want syrup?
Oh my God, bye. I can't even tell you the number of times I've had a conversation with my parents about how I wish they would have taught me, one, even what checks are and like how to budget earlier in life. Now I understand it and I get it, but if I would have had that knowledge base earlier in life, and maybe if it were taught in schools a little bit better, I would have known to start saving day one in college.
Right.
versus waiting until I got my first job.
Yeah.
Even the idea of if your parents give you a certain amount of money every month in college just to cover your living expenses, don't spend all of it. Keep a side chunk
no,
for those
didn't think
rainy
of that.
day expenses. You
Yeah.
never
Right.
know.
But that's hard. I mean, even
Tell
if-
a college kid
even
that,
as
yeah.
an adult, we're always. I mean, even knowing what we know now,
True.
we still waste money all the time on
So then
things
where's the
that,
root of
because
it?
in the moment.
We can't just be wasters. We can't just
No,
be like
absolutely.
what is the root of it? Is it teaching these econ classes at the elementary level and really layman's terms so
Right.
that kids understand?
I think so.
But there's stuff that you can do. You could save what is coming in, but the problem is that what's going out is far outpacing it
Right.
out of anybody's
It's like a
control.
scale.
Exactly.
But by the time you start saving, yes.
Yes.
But if you start saving even your piggy bank money,
Oh, yeah,
like
for
over
sure.
the course of time, I just feel like kids would have a better understanding and make better choices,
Oh, yeah.
Right.
which leads to a
Right.
better life.
Financial literacy is a very
Financial
big thing.
literacy.
For example, for your first job, someone hands you a W-4. Now
Oh my.
you're Googling it right away. How do I
What
fill
is
this out?
this?
And you ask the
1099,
HR person, and
Call
they're
my
like,
dad.
and they'll always give you a non-answer.
Right.
I think you should fill it out the way that you
Right.
think that it's appropriate. So and then you ask your parents. Maybe they don't know exactly how to do that. So it's a very big thing. But I want to talk about something a little bit more profound.
Okay.
The problem with the cost of living going crazy with all these things that you have to spend money on is that then people just get stuck. And here's the situation. Let's say you graduate, you go to college, and you graduate, and you get a job doing something that you love. You're making money. You're paying rent, so money's going out, and you're paying off your student loan, and you're paying off a car, and you're just paying for all of these things. But now your rent in your community where you live, where your job is, starts going up like crazy. We're
Right.
seeing this in Sacramento. We're seeing it also in Stockton as well, and Modesto, because those communities are now become commuter communities for the Bay Area, and also in Tracy and some of these
Right.
places. So now the money's going out. So then a lot of people hit this critical point. It's too expensive to live here. I've got to go someplace where it's not as
Afford it.
expensive.
Yes.
But the problem with that is that your cost of all of these things, medical, student loans, all that, they're still the same. You might move someplace where the rent is cheaper, but likely your
Commute.
income is going to be less, and
Yeah.
there's less opportunity. So
Everything
it becomes
is less.
very difficult to move upward
Right.
in your income and your financial stability, because money's getting siphoned away from you left, right, and center
Yes.
all the time. And the things that are very slow to come up, your wages and things like that, unless you drastically hit a new job and all of that,
Right.
it's just really difficult on everybody. And this is for young people, this is for seniors, this is for everybody. It's affecting everybody at the same time.
Well, because think about it. You, as a parent, I'll speak to my parents, even though I don't think this is their situation. You assume that your child is going to leave the house at a certain point, and then your income that you have allocated to rearing them has been adjusted. It's now reduced so that it's just the two of you. You imagine that child is not going to come back into your home, so you allocate your money differently. But what happens when that child does come back home and isn't able to afford a lifestyle that they want? What do you then do with your retirement fund? And what does that mean for how long you're going to have to be in the workforce? And then you have this dichotomy of older people working and
Right.
younger people working. And that's when all the articles come out about how millennials need to learn how to talk to Gen Xers, and Gen Xers don't understand millennials, and what does that do in the workplace? And it's all of this drama that is
Drama.
it's drama that revolves around one topic, and that is inflation and wage and how they don't add up to the same pie.
But when the kids, I don't say kids because at this point it's adults, and they move back in with parents, right? Is it really expected that the parents also pay for their lifestyle? I mean, the fact that they're putting a roof over their head for free, you should be
Yeah.
working or something where you can
That
afford
probably
some
comes
food.
down to the
But what if
parents'
they
choice.
do
But
have
I think a
that?
lot of families, the
but
parents
that
would say,
should not affect.
you could stay here, but everything else is on you.
Oh
I
yes,
think that's
if
a
they're
very
also
common
paying for your
thing.
food and also paying for your clothes, no, it's like, well then are you even working? Because if you don't have to pay for rent or pay for a mortgage, then you should be able to pay for 2-3 meals a day. I'll provide you the eggs in the morning.
Right.
But for everything else, if you want this great lifestyle to be going to concerts, to be traveling and doing your thing, you
Right.
can't be doing that if you're living under my house.
So that goes back to teaching people how to value money and how to make that budget so that
How to
parents
survive.
aren't
You wanna
put in
eat, you
that
gotta
situation.
work.
True.
You
But
know
I
what I'm
imagine,
saying?
and this is a lot of my friends as well, that we went to a 4-year private education. It costs probably $250,000 to
Absolutely.
go there.
That's
And so
just housing and books. That's just
Everything.
tuition. Yeah.
That's just tuition. And even if you become a lawyer, which one of my line sisters did, it's still a different lifestyle when you leave college than what you had when you were at home. And your parents want to still provide for you a lifestyle that
And if
is
they
like
can,
you
good for
had.
them. If they can, good for them.
But I think it's what most parents want for their child not to have to suffer, for them to be able to provide a better life, if not the same standard of living that they were used to growing up. You don't want to see your child suffer. So parents are stuck in this limbo of what do I do?
right. I guess suffering if the child really does, and the kid, the adult, can't even feed themselves food. Of course, their parents
my
not
God.
going to say no, you
Well,
can't
yeah.
eat.
Right.
But suffering because you can't have the gourmet Michelin star rated meal, that ain't my problem. But again,
Sure.
I don't know because I don't have kids. Maybe I'll have kids one day, and yeah, that's the plan. They have kids one day, and I'll be like, oh, I'm coddling the heck out of them. I don't know.
Ron Neri
I
is
don't
saying
know.
if you cannot afford where you live, simple solution, move.
Right.
Many people do it. You had to know how costly it was to live there in the first place. Get out.
It's an excellent point,
Right.
and that's, I think, great advice. That's the advice. Let's say, as I get older, my daughter gets older, and everything's so expensive. I can't afford to live here. Let's say she decides to live in the Bay Area, and I hear constant
well.
complaints about how expensive. I say, do you have to live in the Bay Area?
No, yeah.
But I would just say the only downside to that is probably where you would move next. You might not have that job.
Right.
You might not have that opportunity. For example, we talked about the middle of nowhere. Let's just say you want all these lifestyle things that are really attractive to people. In Glasgow, Montana, these people have one of the biggest lakes in the United States. There's no one there. There's so many amazing things that you could do there. But your opportunity, well, what are you going to do for work? You can work for the railroad.
Right.
You can work for the oil industry. You can work in ag. There's some service jobs in town. You can work for the National Weather Service in town there. But that's about it. There's not as many opportunities. And what they're seeing in these small towns where it is very affordable is actually they keep shrinking every year. The young people are going to these other places not because they want to spend all of this money or because they imagine this amazing lifestyle that they're going to have. That's where the jobs are.
Right.
Or I'm seeing this whole influx of like young farmers, right? Maybe it's just because given where we live, but
Right.
it would be nice to see in a place like Montana where your wife's family is from, to see that next generation will understand that and get a grip and know that maybe college isn't what is going to get them out and happy and financially steady,
Right.
but maybe learning how to be a great farmer and producing their own agriculture. I know it seems
Yeah.
great in theory, but if you're from there and you live there, you want to
practical.
probably leave. But think about it, like
Yeah.
again, putting that, but like making it a cool thing.
Do you want to know?
Farmers
Do you want to know a dirty
markets
little
and-
secret?
Oh.
Farming, agriculture is extremely expensive, especially to get into. Land,
Okay.
unbelievably expensive.
Equipment.
Seed,
But
equipment.
does the family have land?
See, that's the thing. I mean, yeah, if your family has land, then you take
That's
over the
what I guess
family
I'm
farm.
referring
But
to. You
most-
want to like flee it,
Here's
but
another
it's,
thing.
you're sitting right
There's
there.
not a whole lot of family farms out there. A lot of people actually, they have the land, but they're subcontracted. They actually work for a bigger conglomerate that can
course.
get them the seed and the
Got it.
fertilizer and the combines because everyone
it.
has to harvest all at once. And these, it's $500,000 for some of these machines. So as attractive as farming is, and I'm going to live on the farm, we're going to have chickens and everything's going to be
It's
awesome.
an easy, cheap way of life. No.
It's awesome. It
like-
makes for great YouTube videos and Instagram photos,
my
but I'm
God.
telling you,
Oh
to
my God.
actually
Sexy
make
farmer?
a living at it,
Yeah.
if you don't have a background in that or land to start with, it is extremely expensive. And a lot of farmers talk about they're never really making money, they're just trying to manage their debt.
Right. It's not the margin there. I'm sorry. It's just not there. I remember watching, was it the McDonald's video? I don't remember what it was called. Maybe Super Size Me, where they talked about how farmers, I think it was, I don't remember. It was Food Inc. Thank you, TJ.
Is that Netflix?
I think so. Maybe TJ, yes, not TJ.
TJ's our camera guy.
Yes,
he's
Netflix.
he's a millennial
yes.
through and through.
Okay, so in the documentary, they talk about how farmers are impacted by the wild food chain in the way that it's set up in America. Meaning, you have these big companies like Purdue, like the dairy companies, which get subsidies from the government and as a result want to charge a certain amount for their product.
Right.
But the margin that the company wants to make and the profit that the farmer of the raw materials gets is so small that what you're saying is true. There's no way for them to grow their business in a sizable way in order to expand enough to hire the people that they need to hire in order to grow that business, to take over a bigger part of the market share, to actually make an impact in their lifestyle. So they're stuck, like you said, managing debt and not being able to grow.
Yeah, it's tough. You can do well, and I mean you can, but that's according that everything goes well. And sometimes I know this family in that area in Montana. They decided, hey, let's plant some lentils to see what happens.
Okay.
Lentils became all of a sudden, it was a great crop. Looked good. They had a hailstorm. It was over. They lost their crop, and they have insurance for it. But I said, well, oh my gosh, well, what's going to happen? It was going to be a couple rough years coming back from this. So they did everything right. Mother Nature threw down some hail right
Exactly.
on their farm, nobody else's, and that changed everything for the next couple of years.
That's crazy.
Okay, so this is coming from someone who doesn't want to flee California, right? She
Okay.
says, I'm a 5th generation Californian. Me too.
Okay.
I have children, grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren all here. I will never leave California. It's the best of all weathers. In 2.5 hours, I can drive to the snow to my east or the Pacific Ocean to my west. Love it.
I
For
do
some
love that
people,
too.
generation after generation, like proud Californian, like yes, you will find a way to make it work. Someone else
Right.
had mentioned in here priorities. It was Kimberly Morgan. I'm going to say kind of what she said, but she said it's priorities. Sure, me and my kids, her and her husband works, she stays at home with the kids.
Okay.
It's a lot of kids, but they're able to afford it. She goes, we don't go on a lot of vacations, but we live a happy life. Priorities. So it's just introducing, I guess, a certain kind of lifestyle. If you
That's
grow
what it
up,
comes down
if
to.
you grow up in a certain way, right, and then all of a sudden you're expected to live this way, even though you have better education than your parents who does, it's like, wait, but that's unfair. Then I feel like you start to get this generation of like bitterness, of right, and people just a bit bitter. So it's like having to break that. Someone else in the comments has just asked, we keep talking about this. What's the solution? What's the fix? We always want that, right?
Great question.
Someone else after that said, yes, introducing those economic courses to those kids at a very
Yes.
young age, which is something we talked about. But I don't,
It's
how do you make that happen? Right? I don't know. Is there-
Still at a young age in your child how money works. And I don't mean just the basic level and take this as you go for the weekend, but teach them about economics and the money market system so that they can learn how to build wealth and not just pay their bills.
Or you know what? Sometimes you have
Build
to teach
wealth.
yourself as adults. There are a lot of
Right.
adults
Yes.
out there who don't really know and have been stuck in a situation in mad debt. So
Right.
let's all try to learn a bit more. There are still libraries around where you can check books out, and there's a thing called the internet.
Yes,
Let's
Google.
surf it. Yes. All right.